Well, hello and a very warm welcome to Business Today TV. I am Chetan Bhutani, and today I am joined by a stellar panel of guests who would, of course, decode for us the recent electric vehicle scooter, who have been, of course, unfortunately being on fire these days, and especially with the onset of summer, the season of summer has come quite fiery on electric scooters. I'm joined by Mr. Sohinder Gill, Director General Society of Manufacturers of Electric Vehicles and CEO Hero Electric, Dr. Akshay Singhal, founder and CEO at Log9 Materials. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. First question to Mr. Gill, of course. Mr. Gill, why are EVs catching fire?
It's $1 million question. I think in the last 4 days, everybody has learned why EVs are catching fire. But for the sake of repeating, see from A to Z, if you see, right from chemistry to cells to battery making, module making, BMS, there's so many links in the chain to last point of charging, customer using the vehicle, servicing properly, end of life utilization of the battery. So if I make steps, there are 25, 30 steps in this. And any of them, if not well designed, well formulated, or not well thought of, can create a sort of a hazard in the cells or in the battery or in the functioning of the battery. So once it is on fire, nobody can even point out what happened and why. Right? And on top of it, there are superimposed conditions like Indian climate, Indian weather, Indian temperatures, which make it slightly more difficult than the rest of the batteries to be able to be foolproof or fireproof from that point of view. So it's a whole gamut of things. People were explaining in yesterday panel also, a dust speck in a cell, in 1 in 10,000 cell, later on after 4 years can be a hotspot of creating a fire. So
Right.
that is the thing here. Now it's a question of technology catching up with that, designs catching up with such conditions and making sure that at least they are at early stage. Those things are nipped in the bud or such hazards are isolated. And then, if at all fire erupts as the last incident, like it does in every other thing also, GM's Tesla, then how can you arrest the fire or reduce the damage
Right.
to at least life and property? So these are the dimensions, physical dimensions of handling the fire, trying to stop the fire, or preventing the fire, or early in the game trying to anticipate if there is going to be hazard.
Right. Akshay, over to you. What are your thinking behind this fire incidents? Is it only because of the lithium-ion batteries that everybody's been talking about, or is there something wrong with the manufacturers? Because the battery regulations are there in the market. So, you being a player who's almost like started in few years ago, how's it going, and what is the reason? What is the rationale that you're thinking?
See, taking cue from your mention about regulatory framework being there, right? So, as it is a new market, and like any other new market, regulatory is growing, also growing along with the industry, right? So, saying that the regulatory is already in place or regulatory is to be blamed at how these vehicles kind of turned up on the road, both of the things are not right. In the fact that as the regulator has to grow, the standards have to come in place, they have to evolve. And the problem is that today, all the regulatory that is there is based on international standards, right? Whatever approvals, whatever testing is done on international standards. There has been a long drawn effort to kind of indigenize these standards so that we can test these vehicles, these batteries, and whatever, right, in more Indian conditions. So that effort was going on. It has been slower than required, but yes, it has been on. And then once it comes into place, then obviously unworthy vehicles will not get to the road. That is one part. The second part is that while the regulator is growing up, it doesn't mean that the industry, right, can take they can cut corners and take whatever calls just to save costs or increase margins or whatever, right? You cannot kind of compromise lives, you cannot compromise loss of property, and you cannot compromise safety just for certain strategic business decisions or to cut costs, primarily speaking, right? And hence, in any industry, it is the responsibility of all of us involved over here in the EV ecosystem to make sure that whatever we are putting forward as technology, as product, we have thought through it. As sir over here was mentioning regarding multiple steps being there in a EV pipeline, right? Right from the what chemistry you are choosing, what kind of battery design you're putting forward, and then what kind of battery management system is there, and what kind of charging infra is being used to charge the batteries. All of these things have to be thought through. The challenge is that in an attempt to kind of just mindlessly grow, put out numbers in the market, people have ignored a lot of these aspects. And hence we see these incidents. It's not like it has happened right now. These incidents have been happening over the last many years in the Indian context itself. It's just that now the population of vehicles is high enough that they are catching the public eye. So that's my overall perspective. Coming to the second thought is that in any scenario of safety and so to say building resilience into technology and product, there are two ways to do it. One is preventive and another is curative, right? So you can either start from day one saying that this is the safest technology product that I can put out in the market for the condition that it will operate in. Or the second is key, once something goes bad, what all measures can be put in place so that whatever fail safes can be put in place to make sure that there is no loss of life, loss of property in that sense. So when we talk about preventive measures, it's about choosing the right chemistries, battery chemistries, right kind of battery designs, so that there is no incident of this manner that can happen. The second aspect, which is curative, is to make sure that there are fail-safes. For example, moment the temperature of the battery is going up, there are fail-safes built into the BMS system. There are fail-safes built onto the charger side of the ecosystem itself, that you don't charge beyond a certain temperature and all of those things. And if the temperature is still rising, then there are push notifications on the vehicle or otherwise that the customer should leave the vehicle in a secluded place or something like that. So those things are more curative in nature, and both of them are required in the Indian context. But our belief is that you should start from preventive, make sure that it is completely foolproof.
I would like to ask you what Akshay was pointing out, not just the chemistry, but the entire ecosystem needs to be set right, because in order to have some pressure on sales, the quality gets rendered. So, what would your advice to the companies who are actually having such incidents of hazardous safety issues?
Few things. One is, am I audible better now?
Yes, sir, better.
Yeah. Few things. One is just don't look into certification standards. They are bare minimum and they are catching up. As a brand, as organization, one has to set their own standards of what is the real requirement. And we know if we are into scooters or E2-wheelers or E3-wheelers, we should know what are the requirements from a safety point of view. They may be much away and ahead of the certification standards. So that is a mistake perhaps people are making. They'll barely be able to make the certification standard, though themselves are not in tune with the Indian environment, first of all. So that's one. Second is, till the time, now the question of the batteries on the field that they've already put in, if they think it's a hazard and they have not done enough, then on a curative side, what can be done now should be seen. But otherwise, these explosions will be more in the summer coming months, and that may lead to some sort of a straight hit on their businesses and generate to the category. So we are more worried about 500,000 scooters now on the road itself. Are they also hazardous, or is it only rare case? So that check and balance has to be maintained.
Is the lithium ion the only issue, or the cobalt and nickel in the lithium ion battery, that's the issue, or the air cooling mechanism is at fault? I mean,
see,
the public is already asking us what is the real reason, why is it happening? Because especially in the southern part of the country where it's very hot. So what do we answer them? Because the probe report by the government is still pending, but both of you can intervene as per your want. But who is at fault? Where is the fault really?
Any fuel up rose, you're cooking your meals on a LPG, LNG every day. Is it not an issue if it is handled not properly? CNG, hydrogen, now Gadkari is saying, all are bombs, all are issues. Now there are designs after that to make it safe. No? Fuel itself is an issue always. Correct. Yes, lithium is slightly more volatile from that point of view. So there are more checks and balances required. That's all I'm saying. So the problem as of now is that there is no real alternate to lithium, practical alternate. It will come in future, but right now that's the fuel we have. If that is a fuel, then the mechanisms have to build according to the volatility of the fuel. But, that's all we are saying. But within that also, like Akshay was saying,
because I like people like Log9 and other manufacturers that I know, they are not just manufacturing batteries. They are using IoT and intelligence-based batteries, not wanting to get into fast charging and maintaining that safety requirement, so that in any given kind of pressure and environment, the batteries shouldn't be held responsible. So responsible battery manufacturers are there in the country, but just the lithium ion should be weeded out, or some additional standards or ordinary standards should be need to come right now.
No, within lithium, there is no other alternative. I told you cannot weed out immediately. Other technologies, chemistries are a little away. Yes, there are lithium-based salts which are slightly more safer, like phosphates, etc. They can be always choice of a OEM. So it's not a battery maker so much. Battery maker is going to give you 4 or 5 things. You have to pick and choose out of them. But then you have to ensure the right battery maker there, that he is able to do what you want him to do. So that's one thing. Battery makers themselves will make the least dangerous and the most safe battery also, depending on the money you put in and the efforts you put into it. So coming back to lithium for the next few years, at least for 5, 7 years, I don't see anything else there. So based on that, either you change your chemistry so little safer if you want to play like that, or you built in so many checks and balances and mechanisms that you take care of the volatility of the this thing. And more than that, if it is a comprehensive type of a check and balance you have to do, you have to go much more than just electronic or electrical checks and balances. You have to go much more than that. For example, after the sale, the handling of batteries by customer and service engineers and dealers is so very important here. So that part also can create problems in the battery if not handled properly. So there are so many things inside the battery, outside the battery, in the vehicle, outside the vehicle, which need to be continuously done for any such fuel which is there, which is slightly more volatile than petrol or otherwise.
Akshay, what's your view?
Just following on with what Mr. Gill was saying, right? Particularly, I'll go deeper into the battery side of things itself.
Yeah.
And your question around how should we look at lithium ion in general itself, right? So within lithium ion itself, there are multiple types of chemistries, multiple salts, as he was mentioning, right? And some are more temperature resilient, others are less temperature resilient. Right. And it is while it is a choice with the OEM what they want to choose and how to want to go about it. The challenge really is that can there be a mechanism by which you can take a less temperature resilient chemistry and make it more resilient in the Indian conditions? That's the biggest question. Where the problem comes is in that predominantly the deployment that are happening in the Indian context today are more on the 2-wheeler, 3-wheeler and entry-level 4-wheelers are coming in right now. Now, in these platforms, these are smaller platforms. These also are more cost-sensitive platforms. And when you are kind of creating a solution for these platforms, it's really difficult to build in all the measures which are curative in nature. That okay, the chemistry itself is not very resilient, but can we build around ancillaries around it to make sure that it works? Right? It is possible. I'm not saying it's not possible. The challenge or the question is that is it viable in the context that we are speaking? Hence, companies which have made a more mindful choice of chemistry, which is more suited for the Indian conditions, as you're saying, more responsible choice or responsible battery being put out there, it will be a better scenario. And that is what India needs. And the second aspect of it is that certain chemistry, for example, he was mentioning about lithium ferrous phosphate, which we know as LFP, right? In that scenario, these kind of chemistries, for example, they are not only safer from an Indian context particularly, but at the same time, these chemistries are also less dependent on China. Tomorrow, as we scale and as we kind of grow our ecosystem, it's also who we are depending upon and how can we become more and more self-reliant. So it cuts both ways. And hence, what I'm saying is that we should not be driven or kind of swayed away with what is happening in the international market or what is kind of being portrayed as the winner in the international market, because that can always change, right? 3 years back, it was all NMC, NMC, and NMC, right? The father of the industry, Elon Musk, says that we should do an NMC, so everybody in India and elsewhere is NMC. Now, since the last year, he's been shouting about LFP, so everybody like we should do LFP. First, take a pause, think about it, and see what is required in your vehicles, in the ecosystem that you are going to operate these vehicles in, and then make a choice.
Okay, fair enough. Point taken. Mr. Gill, quickly over to you. Is that the reason? Because big corporates like you, or I won't name other corporates, but yes, involving Hero Electric, is this the reason that all the corporates and big names in this industry, electric vehicle, are going slowly and steadily and not just wanting to pile up for numbers and sales figures and compete with the startups?
Yes, you're right. Not only in battery, but otherwise it's an automobile on the road. There are safety concerns of the vehicle also. So it's a learning curve for any automotive. It's not a toy. So that's why all the organized professional players do take their time of not doing R&D on the road, but at their backyard. And that's what perhaps is one of the missing links for some of the newcomers who are trying to shortcut it in time to market type of a situation. So there is certainly a need, especially on the battery side, of simulating that end of life conditions because deterioration can happen anytime from 0 to 7 years.
Hmm.
You can at least simulate it in 2 or 3 years or 2 years and try to project it to 7 years period before you are confidently saying this battery is safe. So those simulation techniques, those testing techniques, those life cycle techniques are available, and they have to be deployed very properly on a large base, large sample size, not ones and twos. And that's why it takes a lot of time for people to say that, okay, I have chosen the right chemistry, I have chosen the right design of DMS, I have done all I could do in making my battery safer and also performing well. Perhaps to a certain extent, I would say that's been compromised in some of the situations we see now. And that's why now on the curative side, they'll have to work to see to it that after the batteries have been already chosen, designed, made, manufactured, and put in the vehicle, what now can they do on the existing set of batteries that have gone into the customer's area or otherwise manufactured, so that at least the damage is controlled. We have been propagating from SME, we have been propagating a design which I have been sharing with all the willing members of at least on the battery now, you can easily fix. There's a Canadian startup which is making designing this. You can fix a thermal panic alarm type of a thing with a conductive paste onto the battery or on the battery box where you put the battery. At least when the temperature goes to a threshold of a dangerous limit, it's independent power supply, which creates a lot of hell of a noise to tell you that something is going to go wrong after half an hour or so. So please take this battery out if it is a portable battery, or take the scooter to a distant place, or do something about it. So at least loss of life, loss of property type of things, or battery burning the whole scooter is chances are reduced if it's a portable battery. So those are the things people have to now think. What can they do of a complete battery, and then think back what they should do, what it is lying in the factory, and what they have designed and not yet manufactured.
So what would be your message as a veteran in this industry, as a senior in the industry, to the counterparts, sir? Because it's important. We always learn from our seniors. So, what would be your message to the manufacturers, especially being the DG of the association as well, and veteran in the industry, plus at a very high level position in one of the biggest companies for electric vehicle manufacturing? What would be your message to the new startups and companies who are now venturing into this? Is there a lesson to learn from this episode, or probably they need to be more careful, not to be hurrying up? What would you like to say to them?
This unfortunate incident has come uh, at a right time, I would say, because it was just this industry was beginning to explode. The
Right.
industry closed at 320,000 numbers on March 31st yesterday. So next year, it is going to be 1 million and 5 million. So it's come at a right point as an awakening call for anybody who is already there and who wants to enter. That going by examples of at least others, learn now.
Right.
There is enough room to play when you make 1 million and 5 million ahead. And as of now, customer may be feeling little unhappy about it, but there is no ebb in the demand at all. We have seen our showroom still full of people, but asking a lot of questions about that, but still buying the product. So learning from what has happened, and it is good that media is blowing it up out of proportion because it has something to do with life and property also. So learning from there, it is a cue for the people who are just about to enter, the fence sitters about to enter, especially, and the guys who have just entered, to pause, halt, think back. They can still roll back what they were doing and reintroduce the product. They don't lose much. But if they continue to do what they are doing, then we are in for a category level shock, which is damaging for everybody, which at least will be so bad for the country itself that we shouldn't be allowing that.
Right. Akshay, tell me something. How taking a cue from what Mr. Gill said, that stay back and halt and see where you're going. I believe you're into a different ballgame altogether. I mean, you are one of the most confident startups in this industry. So, what would your outlook be, and what would be your message to people who are probably entering to this market or probably have entered and facing such issues?
So two, three things. One is that you cannot apply a software mindset to a hardware play, right?
Absolutely.
While growth is
Very,
very
very good point.
important, but at the same time, it has to be mindful. There are lives at stake, right? And there's property at stake, and that should be taken care of. The second point is that we predominantly in India have been technology adopters and not technology creators.
Right,
Unfortunately, that has been the scenario in the Indian context. So
right.
from that perspective, it is very important to take a cue from all of these scenarios and say that, boss, it's not like you can bring in any technology from outside and just force fit in the Indian context. We
Hmm.
have to be mindful of our requirements, the climatic condition that we have. Two-wheeler, three-wheeler itself is a very India unique kind of a proposition, right? So we have to be mindful of our types of vehicles and the way we use them on the roads, right? So keeping that in mind, there's an important need for indigenized, locally developed ground up technologies, right? So that is the second part. The third part is, and which we all are involved in, is to make sure that the regulator grows much faster than it has already, right? So how can we build in those right kind of standards and testing protocols for elevated temperatures or other kind
Okay,
of
so I'll
conditions?
intervene. I'll intervene. I have been covering Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, Power, Infrastructure, Cabinet. I mean, regular policy decisions I've covered over a period of 8, 9 years. What I'm aware about is that some regulations are made by Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. The regulations for the electric vehicle charging stations are made by Ministry of Power. The SOPs that are rolled out are done by Ministry of Heavy Industries. So, is there a confusion there because there is no nodal agency in the government where the electric vehicle agency or electric vehicle association probably can reach out to and get the problem solved and have a unified decision making body?
Yes, absolutely. I agree. There is a little bit of challenge in basically dealing with multiple aspects because unlike a normal automotive, right, in an EV, it is a multifaceted kind of a technology product ecosystem requirement, right? So from that perspective, you have to deal with multiple departments, ministries, bodies involved, and that obviously has kind of delayed the entire process. And I think there was some initial talks. I'm not so sure how where they are and if they are on table right now, but also of creating a separate ministry for automotive or a ministry for EVs in that sense, right? So those kind of scenarios will help the ecosystem grow more robustly and in a better way.
Mr. Gill, as an association, would you agree that there is a need for a unified body for everything related to electric vehicles? Considering this is a growing and, as you mentioned, it's about to get exploded.
Yeah, because the efforts on coordinating at a central point haven't really worked. Like Ayog has been trying to do it, but they have not been able to get everybody together on one purpose. So certainly DHI, which is the ministry right now handling this, has not much to do with the electric vehicle per se, because the other part is 98%. So certainly there is a need. I find sometimes even things like DST used to be, Department of Science and Technology used to be very actively involved into
Yes.
anything to do, but today they're totally missing. Perhaps they're gone backstage. So such like things have to be thought of. There is certainly a need of a unified one ministry approach, not this type of a seven ministries differently handling seven things and then somebody trying to coordinate them. It's high time because EV are going to be majority of the vehicles in the future. So right now in tandem, the government has to think of one clear role of one ministry which takes care of all this under its ambit.
Right. And last of all, before I conclude, each of you can are free to open in and answer. Uh, when you saw these incidents, as an expert, I mean, I'm not an expert into this field. What would you think would be the probable cause? And of course, for all the people who are watching this, they would love to know if they own an EV, what remedial measures they can take under in the interim period to see if their vehicle is catching fire or some signs, any uh, signs to look out for. Mr. Gill, you can start.
Yes, there is some possibility, not 100% assured, but if the vehicles is bought again and again to free service stations, like free services that manufacturers give once in 3 months, the dealers can adequately, to a certain extent, be able to project early signs of failures. The customer can also be educated about signs, telltale signs of something wrong going with the battery, as far as discoloring or a little bit of bulging or otherwise high temperature in the vicinity when he is charging or those type of things. He can look at that. If they are portable batteries, he should be knowing how to take it out and throw it in the sand pit if required or otherwise away from the vehicle. And Also, the basic charging itself has to be taught properly. For example, we have seen riders going out in the sun, coming back after 50 degrees, and batteries already at 70 degrees, directly plugged into charging, making 110 degrees, boiling the batteries. So such things are strictly no, no, no. So these are the things which have to be educated. For example, I have announced a battery sort of awareness month from tomorrow today to
Great.
all my customers. We are asking all of them to come for a cup of tea at dealerships while they are being totally given new set of commandments of how to take care of the battery. The dealers are checking their batteries also, and it's being
Great.
done free across the country right from today.
Akshay, over to you.
Yeah, so to your question that what is the probable cause, I think it's a combination of three, four things. One is that definitely the choice of battery chemistry that has been made, it's not resilient enough. Then at the same second thing is that it was not combined with ancillary systems to make sure it can be controlled and thermally managed. Third thing is that the fail safes were not put in place in an attempt to hurry up to the market. And the fourth thing was that over promise of charging time and over promise of other performance features which were built into the vehicle or into the marketing to say collaterals or to say how they were positioned in the market, right? And then when these were used actually, right, they led to far more stress and strain on the battery pack itself, which led to the thermal runaway and hence fire and explosion. So there's a combination of these three, four things which have cascaded and led to these incidents.
And any possible signs that the customers should watch out for, as other than mentioned by Mr. Gill?
I think that, as Mr. Gill was mentioning, it is important for us in the industry to make the customer aware. And we also started a campaign today to kind of educate the customer on social media to kind of say that, okay, for example, the obvious, so to say, reaction to any fire or a smoke incident, right, for a customer, right, is that if you throw water on it. But if you throw water on a lithium-ion battery, it will further aggravate the problem. Right? Okay. So these basic things need to be kind of made. The customer needs to be made aware of these basic things, both on the preventive side and on the curative side. How to charge it, when to charge it, when not to charge it. So these things are very important, and that's what all of us are trying to do in the industry.
Okay, lastly, it's a very important point. Both of you pointed out the same thing about customer education. There was an incident where an Okinawa scooter caught fire and unfortunately 2 people died. My question is, when the police report came and of course the company's statement came, they blamed the owner of the vehicle because they said, and the police report allegedly says that the socket in which the plug was charged, the EV was charged, was faulty. It could not hold so much power. If Okinawa would have been smart enough, they could have easily had a circuit breaker system inside the vehicle, wherein instead of catching fire, the circuit would have bursted open and nobody would have died. So blaming the customer because of lack of knowledge, which they are not given, is it the right thing to do, Mr. Gill? And I believe as an association, you should pull this up.
See, electric fires can happen the way it happens, even if there is no scooter due to what sparking and otherwise. But after the fire has happened, the thing is gutted. Nobody can really say with certainty from where it started and where it ended. So statements like this obviously should not be given because there is no investigation behind to say whether it was from the socket side to the scooter or scooter to the house.
And
So
who's
that is
the
one
police
for
to determine
anybody.
this fact?
Sorry.
And who's the police to determine this fact that
Yeah,
the initial
yeah.
investigation and the fire happened because of the faulty socket?
Yeah. That is not at all the right thing to do, and it is without any investigation, deeper investigation. How can you? It has to be a forensic type of investigation to be able to find out the real cause of that. So, irresponsible statements either from manufacturers or police, etc., they are just trying to cover it up. Is not a good thing. And second thing, surely, one can have checks and balances again. That in case somebody tries to use methods which are not as per the protocol to charge the bike, etc., then the thing doesn't work at all. Like you are not able to charge it unless you get the correct type of a current into it, a voltage into it. And lower voltage doesn't really catch. It has mostly to the lower voltage or voltage fluctuations. That will never be the reason of anything going so bad or so wrong. It will be only inefficiencies. So yes, it's okay. Like police may have done their own homework and done it, but manufacturers at least should not be giving such statements out.
But I think you should, as an association, should take this up, suo moto. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
I just had one point to add on this point.
Please go ahead.
irrespective of what the incident cost might be, right? In a growing industry, the customer cannot be blamed, right?
Correct.
It is not the customer's fault at all, right? Either you go out there and make sure that when you're selling a vehicle, you are deploying the right kind of charging setup over there in the house, or at least you are educating the customer that this is the plug point you can charge, this is the plug point you cannot charge. One important aspect is that people don't realize that when they are plugging an EV into the socket, it is similar to plugging an air conditioner into the socket, even if it is slow charging, right?
Correct.
You don't go around and run around the house, take your air conditioner and plug it in any plug point that you have, right? There are designated plug points, power plug points where you put in your air conditioner. So that education is important, and unless and until you have made sure that that education was given, a proper charger was deployed, you cannot blame the customer.
Well, absolutely. I think that's a fair point, and that's what we were all thinking in our newsroom as well. That how probably a charger for an electric vehicle could probably even go inside a socket meant for charging a mobile phone or something like that. But never mind. I think it's up to the police to decide, and of course, investigations going underway by the government. So thank you so much, Mr. Gill and Mr. Singhal, for joining us for this special discussion. We'll be in touch as the matter goes on, and thank you so much for joining us on Business Today TV.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.